Hello, welcome to the supportive information session, Family Impacts of Addiction. Um, this is just a slide to let you know how you can connect to our services given the current restrictions due to COVID-19. Just basic supports, the different extensions, our phone number remains the same, and then the various extensions based on your current needs. Again, some additional supports because this can be a very difficult time. So these are other resources that can be helpful for you as well. As always, a reminder of the tips to protect yourself from COVID-19. Pretty basic: wash your hands, minimize the close contact with other people, maintain the 6 feet. Stay home if you are feeling unwell, and also continue to always do a self-assessment with a helpful website to help you. Click on that to do it yourself. So, a bit of a grounding exercise to begin. As I always do during my sessions, I practice the deep breathing. Some say, John, you're just sighing. However, sighing, deep breathing, it's all the same. So if you could take a few minutes to plant your feet solid, make sure you're sitting upright in your chair, do a couple deep breaths, as many as you see fit. I will give you a short period of time to do that at this moment. And unfortunately, due to the nature, I cannot tell if everybody is back and ready for the session, so I will begin. As I had said, this topic today is family impacts. So we're going to start off, and especially with this one here, I find a lot of times it's a session that I think is valuable for the clients, but also valuable for the family members to hear as well. So the nice thing is as opposed to on site, you can share this SIS if you so wish with family members who are concerned, and some questions you can see how it's being answered for them as well. So stage of change is very important, and I find this slide is very important for the family. You will be immersed in that as clients when you come to our agency. You understand the different concepts. We're a harm reduction agency. We look at stages of change. We try and meet you at that stage, and we explain why individuals are, or why you're in that stage as best as possible. But with family, they don't quite understand the stages of change. Pre-contemplation, a lot of times they're in pre-contemplation. As I always say, I would stand with like a balance kind of thing. So I'd have my hands up, right? And the concept is, here's the love of the substance and here's the problems associated with the substance. So when you start off in pre-contemplation, you love the substance, whatever the choice may be, and the problems are minimal, right? That's called recreational use. That's called in control usage, right? When substance use becomes a problem, when it becomes something that meets needs in people's lives, then the problems increase, right? And so then they grate against each other. So what you have is more of a contemplation stage where I still love the drug, but I don't like the problem associated. I love the drug. So it's literally like a grinding, right? But unfortunately, the only dynamic that changes once you get to this point is the problems, and they will increase and go up, right? So that's a very valuable thing. But the love of the drug is still there, right? That love of the activity, the gambling is still there, right? So you have to address and gain control, right? And once you gain control, then the problems go down, right? And so that you work on that through contemplation, right? Contemplation, and then you prepare for action, and then you move into action. And how fast or how slow you move to that point is really up to you and where you're at, and how you can adjust. And then sometimes family members can be impatient when it comes to that because they're looking for immediate. Well, you're going to addiction services, therefore you're not using anymore, and that's not necessarily the case. With harm reduction, there's a various approaches depending on the types of substances you're using. You may be in action to stop one substance and yet still continue to use the other in pre-contemplation, right? But family sometimes looks at it like, well, if you're using that substance, then you're still out of control in the other substance, and that's not the case. So that's the whole component that you kind of work with. The clients will work with us to try and help move through the stages of change, with the ideal situation is getting into maintenance, where you're in control of the substance of choice that you came to see us about, right? And not necessarily all substances, right? Why do people get stuck in this stage of change? It's, again, a very valuable question for both clients and family, right? It's like, you know, you get confused for the reasons for change. You know, why do I change? I love the drug. I said that. Why would I change? Well, basically, you're struggling with the concept of that emotional decisioning doesn't always work out, and you have to approach things very logically. However, if you've already dealt with your needs in your life through substance use and haven't learned other ways to deal with those needs, you can take the substance out of your life, but the needs are still there and they still need to be met, and you don't know how to address those. So that creates a confusion, right? And also, as family members, if it's somebody else's reasons, that doesn't always work, right? Like, I always have to caution, I'm a youth counselor, I always caution parents and concerned adults that if you give it, you know, stop doing this or you're out of the house, sometimes the youth will pick the substance as opposed to the house, right? So you have to look at more of a cooperative approach, right? So someone else's reasons don't really work well. You can express concern as family members, right? We believe that you need to gain control. We believe you need to seek out support. We believe this is out of control. These are all facts, and those facts don't change, right? So you stick to the basic facts, right? But to say you need to stop and stop right now, then they also need to learn how to deal with those needs that they need. Okay. And not seeing your use or gambling clearly, that's normal, right? Like, in some ways, you don't always see the issues that are in front of you because you're thinking emotionally, right? So if somebody else is coming up to you and saying, hey, I think maybe there's a problem, you have a friend or whoever say that, please understand that most friends don't or family members don't come up and just say that and saying, oh, you know, I'm really looking for an argument with my family member today, or my friend, right? It takes a lot of energy and a lot of focus to bring this up. So if someone does say that, you need to at least evaluate, right? And if your first response, if someone says that, is to be angry, then you have to look at why did I get angry about that? Right? Did they hit a nerve there? Right? And again, that's all self-evaluation. All right. And a lot of times, as far as getting stuck, is unrealistic goals. Right? It's like, okay, well, I haven't run in my entire life, but I'm going to start running 8 days a week. And yes, I did say 8 days a week, because sometimes people overdo it. Right? They're over focused. Right? I'm going to go to school or go to work. I'm going to come home, do work around the house, build relationships, and then I'm going to go to sleep, right? And then we're going to start the next day, right? Rinse and repeat, as they say. Well, that's unrealistic. Where's the fun in life? Where's the what I call non-using leisure activities? Because substance use used to be your or activities gambling used to be your fun. Yeah, people still have to have fun. I always quote the movie The Shining. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, right? You have to work on that balance, right? Of how to focus on your responsibilities, but also focus on your non-using leisure activities, right? And how you move through the stages. That's where you get the support of your counselor to help to bounce off, right? Because we're not emotionally attached. We are here to help you move forward through the stages in a way that's respectful, and to help you to problem solve certain things, right? And also, when you try and change part of the problem, that's almost like a fooling yourself kind of thing, right? Like, okay, so I am I'm going to work every day. I do well at work, so therefore I not going to invest in relationships or having fun. I'm just going to still be out of control in my substance use. But hey, look, I'm going to work. I'm doing okay. right? But in reality, that's not true because you don't have that balance, okay? Right? Being unclear about what and how to change. Well, of course, right? That's everything got changed. Everything is not the way it used to be, right? I want to go celebrate. A lot of times people struggle with how do you celebrate without a substance? And if you haven't learned how to do that, how all of a sudden is that supposed to happen? Okay, so you kind of have to learn. That's kind of what I like to say our job, right? To help you through to understand how to address certain things, how to communicate, how to problem solve, how to deal with stress and anxiety, and how to feel good about yourself. All right. And then sometimes you're overwhelmed with the unexpected, right? How am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to go from where I'm at to where I want to be? And a lot of times that's because you can't go from A to Z in 5 minutes, right? You got to go from A to B and then B to C and then C to D. And the next thing you know, you're at Z. All right, Z, sorry. So the concept is that you slow it down. Take 1 week at a time. What can you do this week, right? And a lot of times, family members, I'm going to address this. I would say a lot of times it's like when you're looking at the client's progress, your family member's progress, it's from the time they came into this agency until now, not from 6 months ago, because 6 months ago is something that will be worked on later on. But right now, it's about gaining and then maintaining control, whatever that looks like for the family member, right? And so that's that developing the relationship as somebody who's gaining control. So you work on from that day forward, right? And you go a week at a time. And as clients, you work on what can you do this week, because you have no idea how good you're going to feel next week. So therefore, you can't plan far in advance. You take it 1 week at a time. All right. Another thing always very clearly is being impatient, but being impatient, it comes from both, right? This is where it's a beauty that if family members are there, because family members can be impatient, right? Again, all right, you went there, so you should stop now, or you should be able to go to work, or what's happening? There's a general level of impatience and this concept that what it's supposed to look like, what is recovery supposed to look like. So being impatient, and then as a client, you're impatient as well. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm going to see this guy again, and we're going to talk about these same things. Why do we continue to talk about these things? I just want to be okay. I just want to be not at addiction services anymore. I just want to be in control, right? And so you get impatient because it stretches your comfort zone. But these are the things that you're trying to work on in the first place. So that's why you come here, right? And you learn how to express those frustrations so that you're staring more at the opportunities ahead of you than the walls, the restrictions based on your past choices. Okay, right? And you lose lots of motivation. You're working harder than you've ever worked before. I say it very clearly when my clients come in to see me that they are working harder, and the fact that you walk in the door in itself is a major effort, right? To come and talk to us about the lack of control and the issues associated with your out of control behavior is not easy. So as family members, you need to respect that it is, some supports need to happen and to be there. And so you work on that. You work together and figure out how to be a support. And I'll talk a little later about supports and how to be helpful, right? Not learning or practicing new behaviors. Again, we can say these are some of the things that might be helpful. We can work on these skills and stuff, but as soon as you walk out the office, you're going to do what you're going to do, right? As a client, and you have to be responsible for the outcome of your choices. So if you have that informed decision, and that's it, that's all we provide is more information so that you can make an informed decision, right? If you still choose not to follow through with that, then we'll analyze it and try and figure out why, right? But in essence, it does come down to you practicing these new skills and problem solving as to what are the barriers to these new skills, right? And not modifying the plan as needed. That's again, 1 week at a time. That's how you slowly learn the skill to modify all the way through for the rest of your life, right? You have to look at this as long-term, right? These are skills that you will continue to develop and you will continue to use, right? To forgetting to give self-positive recognition. As I always say, when you break down the week, you have to look at certain things like, this is my work week, Monday to Friday. okay? Whether you're working or not, and in school or not, or wherever your responsibilities are, you'll always frame it up Monday to Friday. Now, if you are working and the weekend is a time when you work, then you skew it a little bit, and Monday, Tuesday is your weekend. But the concept is there, right? Is that you have to learn that this is my work and this is my time to relax, right? And regardless of what you're doing, you still need to set it up that way, because that's more of a balance, right? That's that concept, right? Okay, right? And as family members as well, there's nothing wrong with being happy that they're coming here. It's not wonderful. You don't wish that your family member has to come to addiction services, but when they do, acknowledge that it is a positive move and see the positives, not necessarily all the negatives, right? Learn how to look at both, right? It's okay to stretch your comfort zone, to say, oh yeah, you seem to be a little frustrated today. Okay. However, that doesn't mean that you're back using again or you're out of control. But what it is that you're learning how to deal with expressing your emotions and you don't know how to, right? So as a family member, you can still say, wow, that's a bit harsh, but at least not in an aggressive way, right? And not liking the options available to you, that's human nature, right? And I learned a while ago that a lot of times people look at things as there's a right decision and there's a wrong decision in life, but in reality these days it seems like there's a bad decision and then there's a worse decision, right? And it's like, what is it, it's still at a cost, right? Their bad decision, but it's not the worst decision. So a bad decision may be the struggles coming to addiction services and to talking to us, but the worst solution may not be coming at all, right? So you work on that kind of method of problem solving. Okay. All right. This is, again, the family thing. This is what I talk about. I'm not going to run through the slides there, you can read the slides, but it's about family and how I work with parents with of youth. Okay, so it's like I always say, let's say the client is a tornado, all right, and they're spinning and they're dealing with what they need to do, right? They may be in crisis, they may not be, they might be in the eye of the storm, so that it's a calm. However, it's a crisis, the emotions are all going. As a family members, you don't walk into the crisis, you don't walk into the tornado, because you're getting spun around as well and you're in crisis, and then all of a sudden nobody is working to improve the situation, it's just crisis. Okay, so you stay on the outside of that tornado, you let them do what they need to do. Maybe it is a bad day, maybe the emotions are out of control, but your day is not negatively impacted or controlled by their behavior, right? And your relationship with the person is not um, negatively impacted to the point where it creates issues. Obviously, there'll be some negative impact, right? But it's more of like, okay, it looks like you need your time, right? You say it or you don't say it, but in essence, you try and be a support when needed. Okay, and you'll look at that component, not enter into the crisis. All right, so a lot of times you look at this slide and you try and maintain control at that point in time, right? And the same with these. Okay, I'll just leave this up. But again, it's all about working with them, not mimicking the behavior, not entering into the tornado. Okay. Enabling. And I like this slide because this happens a fair bit, right? What is enabling, right? And I hear it all the time, right? So, parents are working with me, family members are working with me, and all of a sudden, the neighbor 3 doors down said, well, you're just enabling him or her. If you don't do this, if you don't close off all supports, they're not going to change. Well, in reality, that's not necessarily the case. Okay. You decide what makes sense. I remember working with somebody, and they, of course, their child had basically had to leave the house, couldn't be there anymore. There was a lot of hurt feelings around that, right? And then and the mother was struggling because she wanted to send out a birthday card, and I said, well, why are you not sending out a birthday card, right? You still that's what you would do. You still want to express that you still care for this person, that you're still there for this person, but you don't accept the substance use or the out of control substance use, not the person themselves. And that you will always be there, so you'll always wish them a happy birthday. But you also want them to change. So that doesn't mean you get to come home because of all the issues that you created. What it means is that you're still there as a family member, and we'll support them when they want to make changes, okay? And encourage them. If that means bringing them to the session, right? And you sit there and you wait the hour, okay, and then you go home with them, or you go have a coffee with them afterwards, and talk or not talk about the session, right? You yourself as a family member know that the client got there, your family member got there, they had a session, and then they left. You feel better about it. You don't have to question whether they got or not. And that's usually the case that leads to people thinking, well, you're just, you're enabling. No, it's a win-win situation, problem solving. And you look at it that way, right? How do you problem solve so it's more of a win-win, right? So then everybody's needs are being met. Obviously, if you're calling in and saying, my son or daughter or a family member can't make the appointment today, that's something they can do, right? If they can't make the appointment, unless of course it's a major health issue, but for the most part, if they just don't feel like coming in today, so then let them do that part. Let them explain that they don't want to, and let them rebook their appointment. Right? It doesn't have to be a big deal, but they have to start to face their responsibilities, right? That's the main thing. Okay. Healthy detachment, right? That's kind of like what I said, right? Again, don't enter the tornado. And the reason I give examples, I always give examples, and maybe it's because I'm a youth counselor, maybe it's because it's me, I don't know. But that whole concept of, are you in the tornado or not, right? If you enter into it, and sometimes you do, it doesn't mean that you make mistakes. It doesn't mean that that was wrong. Sometimes you do that. Sometimes we enter the tornado and we don't mean to. It's how you exit it again is the healthy part. So you went in, I'm going to get out again because I'm not really helping. I'm actually making things worse. I'm making things worse for them, and I'm making things worse for me. So I'm going to exit back out again. I'm going to let them know that I'm here. I'll be support. However, there are boundaries. Set the boundaries prior to the tornado, prior to the crisis. How do we communicate when you're in crisis? How do we communicate when it seems like you're in a negative mood? You set up that framework and you work with the family member, because they're going to come and see us. So family members are asking me to set something up. How do I do that? There's a problem solved. We are a resource here at the agency. That is our job, to help you through that, to provide the information so that you can make an informed decision. There's the concept. So then now you can start addressing things that you used to avoid through activities or substance use. You now learn how to address it. And you'll find that family members can be quite patient as you're learning this process. Okay? All right. Again, so here's the concept. 4 basic life skills, as always. Open and honest communication. Clear information, right? How to problem solve in a win-win situation. Talk, listen, communicate, right? How to find the support. How to deal with stress and anxiety. How to accept reality. Same thing, right? How to stay calm, right? The concept of staying calm isn't always possible, right? But you learn how to deal with a crisis prior to the crisis. It's hard to stay calm in a crisis, but it's easier if you prepare for it. It's easier if you give yourself that guide map. You plan out your week so that you're logically approaching life, not emotionally approaching life. Because substance misuse is based in emotional decisioning, not logical decisioning. So you try and find all those things, right? And detach with love, not anger, right? Which in essence is, how do you feel good about yourself? How do you work on your own self-esteem? How do you, if you're communicating and you're problem solving in a win-win situation and you feel like you are actively, proactively addressing your stress and anxiety on a daily basis, then you start feeling better about yourself. You start feeling better about yourself, you approach relationships differently. So therefore, you start feeling better about yourself some more. And then it just continues to build, right? One of the things I say very clearly and say how to deal with stress and anxiety. How do you deal with stress and anxiety? Well, I ask my clients right off the bat, very first appointment, I ask them if they read. Do you like to read? 90% of the time is my clients will say, no, I don't. Right. And because they're still caught in because I'm a youth counselor, so they're still caught in the school mentality. Whereas reading is associated with read 3 chapters. You're going to answer questions the next day in class, right? It's always not the enjoyment of the reading, but it's work and more work. And sometimes, I'm honest, I am not a fast reader. So when you're asking me to read 3 chapters tonight, that's 5 hours. I'm very slow in my reading. I immerse myself in the story, right? But I can't possibly read 5 chapters, right? Or 3 chapters, sorry. And if I go the next day to answer questions, I'm going to make sure that I try and answer the first few questions because I've always read at least 1 chapter, right? But unfortunately, teachers don't tend to ask the person that they know probably didn't read the 3rd chapter, right? They're going to ask the people that they know read the 1, 2, and 3. And so they're going to ask others. So all of a sudden, you're not going to stand up. I'm not going to stand up in the classroom and say, sorry, teacher, I am incompetent in my reading. I could not possibly read 3 chapters, right? That is 5 hours, and I don't have the 5 hours. I don't like the book that much because I didn't get to choose it, right? So what I try and say is reading is more for what I call non-using leisure activity, time by yourself, right? You're trying to focus in on that balance where you can stay calm by getting time by yourself. And reading is perfect for that, right? And in the reading, so let me set it up. It's easily accessible. So that book that you're going to grab, it's got to be a book. It's not going to be a phone, and I'll explain why. Or it can't be a Kindle or any other electronic device. It's the best you can. However, I always recommend at the beginning to make sure it's a book, right? But it's got to be a book for fun, okay? No self-help books, no Million Little Pieces or how the rock bands made it through the heroin days. None of that stuff, right? Just for fun, okay? So you get that book, right? It's easily accessible. You can't sleep at 2 in the morning. I'm not going to ask you to go for a walk. I'm not going to ask you to walk around the house, but you can get out of bed and pick up a book and read, right? It's right there. Fights boredom. Substance use or behavioral activities filled a huge void in your life, right? So you're going to automatically be bored because you're going to witness the lack of activities, other things that you didn't invest in before, other non-using leisure activities that you didn't invest. You have to learn, right? So reading is very simple. It fights boredom, right? And then moves to the next thing, helps you forget about your problem, or gets a break from reality. Sorry. That's why it's got to be a book, and that's why it's got to be a book for fun, right? If you pick up your phone and you start to read, you may be reading on that phone, but people tend to interrupt that. They're used to interrupting people when they're on their phone. But I don't know what it is. It's still the same case, right? It's that if you're reading a book, 9 out of 10 times, people will not interrupt you. Okay? So you get that break from your reality. So if you're having a good day, great, read. If you're having a lousy day, I am sorry, read. Get that break from reality, right? And if you get a break from reality, stress and anxiety naturally goes down. All out of that simple little book. Basically, it replaces substance use. Easily accessible, fights boredom, helps you forget about your problems, and decreases stress and anxiety, right? It's a simple little book. So I always encourage people to read a book at the very beginning, right? And family members as well, because they're still trying to manage. So if you get a break from your reality, stress goes down. If stress is down, right, and something major happens, an issue happens, it doesn't force you to go back to lapsing or relapsing or substance use. You're allowed to maintain a level of calm so that you can address the issues at hand. And if you don't know quite how to deal with that, if you follow the supports that you've set up, then you can ask for supports calmly. And that's the whole thing, right? There's the concept, right? At least in my world, right? 5 healthy detachments. I never read out this slide. I'll let you read it out, okay? But it is the concept where you are responsible for the outcome of your choices, not intended outcome. And it's always very clear, right? And sometimes, unfortunately, with substance use or misuse, sorry, you're held accountable for a little longer. You're working on that trust level again. You're working on the communication skills and how to get a balance in your life. And that's a little bit of work. But you can't put the energy in because I didn't teach myself before, is teach yourself now, right? And that's that whole thing. Okay, how to be responsible for the outcome of your choices, not intended outcome. So that's a concept of the slide, right? Setting healthy boundaries. That's the key thing. In crisis, it's hard to set boundaries, but when things are calm, you work on the plan. You talk about the plan. How do I get through this? Okay, how are you a support? When will that happen? When will I do? What will I need to do? As I always say, set it up like a weekly schedule, right? I would pick my planner up. See, I have a planner, right? What am I going to do this week? What are my responsibilities? And then what are my non-using leisure activities? And those are broken up into three: time by myself, indirect social interaction. That's where you're not talking to people, but you're doing things. You go for a walk, you go for a jog, a bike ride, skateboarding, sit in the park, right? Sit in the backyard, watch a movie with family, right? You watch a TV show, something, play video games with somebody else, right? Where you're interacting with people, but you're not addressing any issues. So I don't, you can't be by yourself, but you don't really want to address issues. And the direct social interaction, that's when you sit down for supper every meal and you talk about life, but you don't talk about life issues. You learn how to have those direct things. And a proactive approach would be, okay, as family members, they're concerned about my substance use or lack thereof. I never talked about it when I was using substances, so my lack of conversation doesn't change. Or how would they know that I'm in control of my substance use if I don't talk about it? And what I say is mimic what happens in our sessions. When you come to our agency, you're prepared. You know what you're going to talk about for the most part, but it's going to be substance use related or lack thereof. Okay, so you're prepared for it. So you talk about it, and you talk about it openly. You set up the same thing with family. Right? Okay, so every Wednesday at 4 o'clock for 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to review my week. I'm going to let you know whether I've used substances or not. I'm going to let you know how I'm doing as far as my substance use. That answers questions, right? So then the family members are prepared. Okay, if I see something on Friday night, I don't raise it Friday night, I raise it on Wednesday so that you're prepared. And also the family members get to express themselves without feeling like they're walking around on eggshells all the time, because they, in essence, want you to be okay. And so you work at setting it up so that you both have a way to talk about it. It's uneasy, it's awkward at first, right? But you get the practice. And you may be just simply taking that 5-10 minutes after each session to say, hey, that was a good session or a bad session. I learned some stuff, didn't learn some stuff, right? It was a good day, it was a bad day. All right. And that's all just based on just communicating. That's what family wants, just get that comfort level. Because once you get into a crisis, then you can fall into the healthy boundaries that you set. Okay, I'm angry and going to yell at people. I'm going to pick up that book and read for 20 minutes. Family knows. We're going to leave them alone. Let them do it. Let them read. Okay? Whatever reason, he's reading, she's reading. Go ahead and read, right? Because that's your way to say to people, I need to have time. Not blow up and say, why don't you give me time? You can take a proactive approach. Pick up the book, read. Set healthy boundaries. Family knows, leave the person alone. Leave them alone. They're reading. Are they reading because they need to, they're bored, or that they're upset? But either way, it doesn't really matter, because after 20 minutes to an hour of reading, right, you tend to feel good. And the reason I say 20 minutes to an hour is you kind of look to our moderation, right? A lot of times people struggle with the concept of moderation. What is moderation? How do you do that, right? So you practice that skill as well, right? Reading for, you can read various times through the day, but 20 minutes to an hour, roughly. If you're reading for 8 to 10 hours a day, that's not okay. That's not a balance. That's not a balance, right? If you're, like I say, running apparently is good. I'm not a runner, right? But a lot of people are. But if you run like Forrest Gump for days, right, you're avoiding your life, then that's not okay. So everything that can be considered good for you can be bad for you if you overdo it, if it's out of moderation. So you use that schedule to make that plan, right? You make a logical plan. What are my responsibilities? What are my non-using leisure activities? And if there's substance use, you put substance use in there if you're still doing that. But the concept is that substance use cannot negatively impact your responsibilities or non-using leisure activities. Okay, right? So that's the concept of the healthy boundaries. And I'm hoping that you read all that, but as you can see, the last one is very much respect-based. Everything is based on being respected, but also being respectful. And that's the other concept of a relationship. And that's usually where substance use negatively impacts that. Because it's kind of hard to be in a respectful relationship if you're dealing with life issues through your substance use. Meaning, if you're upset with me for something I said, right, and you go and use and you come back, right, and then never address it, I'll do the same action again, not knowing that it upsets you because you never expressed it. But if I did something, you say, why did you say that, John? Right? I can at least have the ability to express myself why. And it may be good and it may not be good, but at least it leads to a conversation, right? So then you learn how to problem solve. And that's really what people give that concept, basic respect, okay? Roadblocks, in many ways, this seems to be the only slide I never feel like I have to show. People know what the roadblocks are, right? But I'll leave it up there. I'll leave it for family members to see and for clients to see, because it goes both ways, right? These are the things that causes people to shut down, and everybody seems to know these. But it's a nice slide because it's listed, right? In some ways, you look at it as family members and decide, okay, this is a roadblock to effective communication. I never thought of that before, and that's why I leave it up there. Okay, right? How to communicate, and that's the whole fair fighting rules. Is again, you're going to see the general theme. I've said it already. It's about how to be respectful towards each other, how to work on what your needs are. This is why I can't be specific. This is why I can't give you a schedule. Say, here, follow this schedule, because each person is an individual. Each family member, each relationship is at certain stages. And so you learn, and only you and the family members understand where you're at. But if you use these fair fighting rules, if you try and be clear, if you work at it. Now, please understand, this is kind of like running a marathon, okay? Right? It's like, oh, I bought running shoes today, I'm gonna run the marathon tomorrow. No, it takes time, takes effort, takes practice, right? You practice these skills. And what you'll learn is that these skills will always need to be adjusted, always need to be looked at, right? How am I doing? Am I communicating clearly? What do I do? How do I do it? Can I do it better? Period. Every day, okay? You kind of look at that, or maybe once a week. That's why you do the weekly schedule. How'd I do? Oh, I did too much work this week. I need to shut her down a little bit. Or I'm really kind of bored. I need to do more things. Or I'm using too much substances this week. I need to slow it down again. I kind of went back to that old path. I'm not reading every day because I don't believe that guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But then you start reading every day and realize, oh, okay, now I get it, right? Now I understand. Because a lot of times, doing these things don't make sense until you actually experience the benefits of them, right? Because you struggle, you don't know. Right? So try certain things. Okay? That's the whole concept. But then you talk to people, you talk to the counselor, and you work on how to communicate with the counselor, and then you transfer over to the family members so that being clear constantly works. Because at some point in time, you stop coming to see us, but there'll always be family members. Okay? And you work on those relationships. How to confront. Confrontation in a non-confrontational way. That's the main thing. Everybody looks at confrontational as the big blow up, right? Or the big shutdown. Both are just as damaging and very emotionally based, right? And I'm not saying people can't have that, but again, set up a plan of what works best for you. As an example, I always say to my clients, look, try and do a 20-minute kind of rule, right? So let's say, as I say in an example, a client and I will get into a huge argument, okay? For the 5 minutes, we're gonna go for a walk. All my clients are youth. They have cell phones. I don't have one, but they do, right? So they set an alarm. For the first 5 minutes, I am just a terrible person. How could I not understand what they're trying to say? And I'm so silly in everything I said, right? So then the 5-minute alarm goes off, okay? So then the next 5 minutes, it's no more of that negative talk. You're just relaxing. You're noticing that, hey, it's raining outside or it's sunny outside. Have you ever been so emotionally charged and you go for a walk and you didn't even realize that it was raining? Maybe that's a me thing, but I find that fascinating that you can be so caught up in a situation, but you calm down. You look at the plants. You look at, are there leaves on the tree? Is it raining? Is it winter? Is it summer? Right? Whatever, right? But you're just taking 5 minutes to calm. The alarm goes off again. You turn around. You're walking back, right? So the next 5 minutes, It's all about, what was I trying to say to John? Because usually people get upset when they feel like they're not being heard. Okay, right? So what was I trying to say to John? And then bam, alarm goes off again. And the last 5 minutes is, what was John trying to say to me? There's the key, right? So replace John with family members, right? What were the family members trying to say to me? So then, as I always say to my clients, you're my clients, so you come in, right, after 20 minutes and you assess, is now a good time to talk? Because what you're set up is, it's not going to go on forever. You put a time limit on it, and you're going to do your best to hang to that 20 minutes. Now, the family member's doing the same thing as you did. I encourage them to do the same thing. Maybe not leave the house, but take the 20 minutes to go through the steps, however they need to, right? So that when you come back together, the client is who I encourage, because they're my clients, to say, is this what you were trying to say to me? Because this is what I was trying to say to you. Now, it doesn't always work perfectly, right? But it's a framework to work with. And you go from there and you see whether it works or not. But it covers that respectful kind of thing. I'm not taking off for days. I'm not ignoring it, right? We're going to problem solve it, because this relationship means something to me. There's how to be confrontational in a non-confrontational way, right? You're entitled to your emotions. Everybody is. But how you express them is usually what causes problems, or lack thereof. Okay, there we go. Process of confrontation. Coping with tension. That's that balance, right? That's that proactive approach. I love Calvin and Hobbes, by the way, but it's about that approach, about a proactive approach. Keep your stress level down. Go for a walk. Why are you going for a walk? Because I want to. Let's do the schedule. Logically, like some people, it's like, okay, I need to go to the gym twice a week. Okay, go to the gym twice a week. Make it happen. Make that logical decision that every Tuesday, Thursday at 4 o'clock, you're at the gym, right? Or you're going to go for a walk, or you're going to do some physical activity if that's what you want, or I'm going to paint, or I'm going to draw, or I'm going to play a musical instrument. Oh my goodness, if you can play a musical instrument, it's like a gift, right? So you take the time to enjoy that gift, right? You do things that are just meant to be fun, non-using leisure activities, right? So you learn how to invest in that. Reading that book will decrease your stress and anxiety, which will naturally decrease tension, right? You start to take a proactive approach, right? You start to work on things so that it doesn't negatively impact your life, right? So it doesn't build up to the point where you're having to decide whether you use or not, because that's how you dealt with that level of tension before, or stress before, right? So substance use isn't always family members. Substance use isn't always about wanting to use. It's not wanting to deal with these tension anymore, not wanting to deal with these issues, right? So if you learn how to deal with them, and you deal with them in a small amount, they never build up, so that you learn that skill. So that's usually very helpful, okay? The communication, right? As I say, I love this slide, and usually when I'm presenting in the agency, I've always gone over time, so I never get to this slide, but this is such a valuable one to me, right? This is why I always say to my clients, look, try not to do text messaging when you're dealing with a relationship, because there is no nonverbal. It's just the words, which only represent 7%, right? That nonverbal is very important. I'm not having it right now. Normally, I know the people that are in front of me watching this presentation, so I get an idea of whether, oh, John, move it along, or they're really interested in certain areas. Okay, the nonverbal is very important. Okay, and you've got to work on that, especially if your emotions are out of whack, right? You may be assuming that someone is just frustrated with you. In reality, they're just frustrated because they're not able to understand what you're trying to say. But it's not about you, it's about what you're saying to understand it, right? So they try and work on it. So don't overreact when you see a thing, and try not to do the certain things. If you're talking to a family member and they roll their eyes, right, you're going to have an emotional response. So you may want to go, I'm sorry, was there a problem? Was there something there I said that frustrated you? If that's open and honest. And if you can't do that at the time, saying, hey, you know what, we're going to have to set up that way. If you're going to roll the eyes, I'm going to need 10 minutes or 20 minutes, right? I need to calm back down again, because that activates, that's a trigger for me, right? You start to learn to speak that way for a while, okay? And maybe forever, I don't know, okay? But you're going to use your own words as well, all right? Not my words, I'm just trying to give an example, but that actual spoken word, all right? You know, that is only based on everything else that's going on. How many times have you heard, how are you today? Fine. Whoa. Okay, so that fine, as far as the word, means everything is okay. But the tone was like, nah, you're just blowing me off. That's like a what I call garbage words, right? Fine, okay, nice, okay. When I say throw it, you throw it out, right? Has no value, has no meaning, right? And it's supposed to accommodate or answer the question. It doesn't. It's a dismissive. It's garbage. It's thrown out, right? So something would be, oh, not a bad day, right? I'm working on some things, working on some other things, right? I'm kind of bored. There's an honest answer, right? And that's kind of like that emotions, right? And when you're picking up on different things, that's when you know that you're being honest, right? So you have to understand it's working on being honest, right? Lapse and relapse happen, okay? It's it doesn't mean it always happens though, but it does happen. As family members, you need to understand that if there's a lapse is a one-time, shorter duration use or one-time use, right? That means that a need wasn't being met. And they hit the point where, all right, they made an emotional decision. They chose to use again, right? 99% of the time, they regret it the next day, right? But it doesn't mean that they're back using as much as they were before, family members. Okay, you have to look at that. And a lapse is something that we work with. We try and help the person through that. Relapse, relapse usually is a longer period of usage, right? But it's never as long. So let's say clients come to see me, right? They've been using a certain substance for 5 years, okay? And now they're frustrated with it. And they see me for 6 months, and then I don't see them again because they've relapsed, right? But it generally doesn't take 5 more years for them to come back. They're usually back within 3 months, right? So the duration of the relapse is shorter because the desire is still there. The desire to change is still there. The inability to trust themselves that they have the skills, the inability to have the energy to deal with it right now is what's lacking, not the desire. How many people I've talked to that smoke cigarettes have wanted to stop, right? And first off, it's like, so they, yeah, I quit smoking 5 years ago. I say, okay, when did you first desire to quit smoking? Usually it's 10 years ago, right? As an example, right? The desire is there, and when you get to it is when you get to it. But that doesn't mean that, oh, I really want to keep back using. Of course, you love the drug and you made an emotional decision. Don't get me wrong. You're still responsible for your choices, right? Family members, or clients, I should say, right? Uh, but you work on that to understand and not to overreact. And that's where that not being emotionally attached is very helpful, because we can analyze it and work at it going, hey, wait a minute, you did something you said you didn't want to do. Why is that? What happened? What need wasn't being met? And this slide, unfortunately, is just going to indicate the end. What I don't have is the poem that goes with this, right? So I do apologize, but it kind of like is a motivational kind of thing where you help people, you support people, but you don't overdo it, okay? So I will simply end this session like that. I believe there's a thank you. So thank you for attending. Thank you for listening to me. I hope it was beneficial, and there's parts of this that you found helpful. That is always my wish. Bye now.